Not a single great person has ever existed that played within their safe space, right? A ship at harbor is safe, but that's not what ships are built for. And it's the same for people. If you want to play it safe and you want tomorrow to be the same as today and a month from now to be the same as today, you're so in automatic that just nothing is ever going to happen. And you can think that you can live in that safe space, but the universe does not want that to happen, and they're going to throw you curveballs, right?
Hi, Tracy. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Welcome to Peak Performance Perspective, where we help entrepreneurs master health, wealth, and relationships. Now, as a business consultant, entrepreneur, growth coach, what does peak performance mean to you?
For me, peak performance is about pushing yourself to your limits. There's a whole lot of ways that you can do that, whether it's training, whether it's learning something. But for me, it's when you achieve flow. So you are heavily engaged in what you're doing, and there's a connection where time just becomes irrelevant and you get truly absorbed in what you're doing. So you feel like you can just do that forever.
Why do you think that is important? Because a lot of people look at their businesses or look at their work as just a time-bound activity that they need to get done so that they can have a balanced relationship with other aspects of their life. What does flow mean to them?
I think when you're a business owner, there are going to be things that you do where you are going to achieve flow, and there are going to be things that you do where you just have to suck up and do it because there's no one else to do it. So I think it's about understanding and aligning your energy and your focus in the best way. If you know that you are not a morning person, you're going to do all of the boring kind of dot the I's and cross the T's then. But when you know you need to get into a creative space, or you need to think about your strategy, or you need to think about a new product or a service, you want to make sure that's when you have the most energy and you also have that uninterrupted time. So yeah, I think it is more about planning your energy more effectively rather than expecting everything to just feel amazing.
So, what does that mean when you're talking about this energy? Because sometimes entrepreneurs don't know the difference between when they're in flow versus when they're just busy.
The state of flow is, you'll know it when you achieve it. If you think of pursuing any kind of hobby, when you get so absorbed in something that you lose all of your self-awareness, you're not aware of yourself because you are fully engaged. You're getting that immediate feedback. But the big thing is you lose track of time. You lose all sense of time. So when you come out of that flow state, 2 hours could have gone by and you would think, wow, that felt like 10 minutes. It really is. It's a sense where you don't feel amazing. And it's not as though you feel bad. It's just that you're completely lost in it. And everybody experiences this. Maybe not so much in the workspace, maybe very often not even in the entrepreneurial space, unless, say, as a specialist, you totally enjoy building electrical components, and then you'll find you lose yourself in that. If you play sports, you can be so into what you're doing that you experience flow in that way. So everybody experiences it, no matter what you're doing. It's just you want to make sure that more of your time is spent in flow, because that is ultimately going to be where you are not only going to perform the best, but appreciate your skills and your energy the most.
So, the way you described it, it's almost like flow state is something that we get into, that happens to us. What are some practices that can help someone intentionally enter flow state? Or is that even a thing?
If we were to speak to any organizational design people, they would be rolling their eyes right now, because this is what we really look for. This is what we want to be able to achieve when we're hiring people, when we're setting out job functions, when we're putting together a scope of work, so that we know that certain things go together which allow people to experience more flow. The big components here is what is the complexity of the work? And this is very clearly defined. It's been scientifically researched since the 70s. So what is the complexity of the work? And you have different themes of work within that space with increasing levels of complexity. And then on the other hand, you have the individual's cognitive capability. Now, cognitive capability has always also been extensively researched. And this is about how comfortable are you making decisions in the face of uncertainty. So if you're the kind of person who likes to know and to know the consequences of what you're doing and you want that time frame to be very short, then there's going to be a very specific theme for you where if you engage more activity in that space, you're going to experience more flow. Whereas someone who has, say, a director of a company, for example, where they need to understand a lot of complexity because the decisions that they make now, they actually won't know the results until 2, 3, 5 years down the line. But they will thrive in that space. So it really is unique from person to person.
You describe your superpower as personal transformation. What was your most transformative moment and why did you need it?
This is like so borderline embarrassing, but I started very late in my life. For the first 35 years of my life, I just flitted around. I had no concept that I was in control of where I ended up. And regardless of how I ended there, I don't have that story because I don't feel that part is important. What really changed it for me is I was waiting for an interview, and because I'm super early for any appointment. And so I had a Tony Robbins book that I brought along, and I started reading that. And for the first time, I actually asked myself, damn it, if you can actually write your own path, if you actually are in control of the results that you get, what you get out of life, I need to know what I can do. And the funny thing is that it was actually an interview for a massive change in career for me. Whereas before I was filling the finance role, this was actually in sales. So it was in recruitment, which is very sales focused. And so I go in and I'm full of Tony Robbins power. And of course, I got the job. And that was probably the turning point for me where I really started focusing on human behavior, the impact of human behavior on results, talent. How do you know who has it? The people who don't reflect it, can they have it? Yeah, these are all the questions that I wanted to know the answers to.
What were the answers? I mean, when you talk about human behavior and
it's so funny. There's a book written about, it's called, I can't think of it right now, but you have to hold two conflicting thoughts in your head and somehow manage for that not to cause you internal pain and suffering and cognitive dissonance. Because there are rules, there are things that you can know, but even within psychology, there are a lot of different approaches, there are a lot of different methodologies, there are a lot of different groups where they'll focus on the past, then you'll have the positive psychology where it's more around focusing on empowering people. And I think what I have learned is that every single person has the ability to reach their peak. Every single person has an ideal version of themselves. Call it a Tracey 2.0 or a Mark 2.0. The challenge is, in order for you to actualize that, in order for you to reach that best version of yourself, it costs you in time, it costs you in effort, it costs you in energy. You have to get outside of your comfort zone because you never know what you're capable of until you push yourself beyond your own limits. And I think ultimately that's the best answer I can give you.
pushing ourselves beyond our limits is unsafe. So what role
Is it unsafe? Or is it
feels
absolutely
unsafe.
necessary?
It feels unsafe because we're doing things we've never done before. We're experiencing things we've never experienced before. So what is your belief system about safety and the role it plays at achieving greatness?
Not a single great person has ever existed that played within their safe space, right? A ship at harbor is safe, but that's not what ships are built for. And it's the same for people. If you want to play it safe and you want tomorrow to be the same as today and a month from now to be the same as today, you're so in automatic that just nothing is ever going to happen. And you can think that you can live in that safe space, but the universe does not want that to happen, and they're going to throw you curveballs, right? Every single story, novel, movie, it's all around a person starting out, having a certain role for themselves, and then this call to adventure. And they're either going to take that call or they're not. But ultimately, it's about eventually they have to. And in doing that, they transform into hopefully a different, better, happier, more well-adjusted human being. We have to step outside of the safety. The safety it's a biological thing. It's a survival thing. But we are capable of so much more than just surviving.
We all hear about these things, that we must push ourselves beyond our comfort zone. We need to challenge ourselves for growth. But a lot of times we don't know what to do or where to get started. So, what is the inner work that you think most entrepreneurs avoid but absolutely need to do?
In a work, I think first find out, I think that Johari window is a really good place to start because that gives you a grounding on what you know about yourself. It opens up the door to find out what other people know about you that you don't know. And then it also opens the door to discovering things that nobody knows. So they don't know, you don't know. Behavioral assessments. These are a good tool. I'm not saying they're always 100% accurate, but it's still better than a horoscope. This gives you an overview of observable behavior. Now, your observable behavior is going to connect to what are your beliefs and what are your values. So if you are behaving in a certain way, that behavior is being driven by something that you're thinking. Now, if you are not getting the results that you want, you need to be able to identify what is getting in the way of that. A simple way to do that is journaling as well. Journaling is fantastic. So as you write down what happened to you, what was the consequences, how did you feel about it? The more you do that, the more you can get insight into, okay, so these are really my triggers. When this kind of thing happens, then I either have an emotional response or I shut down. And it's looking at those emotional responses or the way in which you respond to things that happen in your life that give you the biggest opportunity to say, okay, so what is going on there for me? What do I believe about that? And that is the first place where you can say, is that actually serving me or not?
When somebody's making such radical shifts in their life and their being and their thought process, essentially what they're going through is an identity shift. And that can be scary because we grow comfortable to being a certain way. We like ourselves a certain way. We have friends and family members who accept us with that identity.
When it comes to self-development, when it comes to challenging your own self-identity so that you can have more control over the results that you're getting, your life satisfaction, your connection, your meaning, and your purpose, this is not something that happens over a month. People change very slowly. I was speaking to someone not very long ago, and he's in his 80s, and he said that his life only started at about 63 because he was diagnosed with ADHD at that point. And for the first time in his many years, he could understand what the driving factors were behind all of his behaviors, the decisions that he'd made, the choices that he took. And so even though that diagnosis was made at 63, and he speaks about this as a profound influence on his life, he's still talking about that profound influence at 80. So that is still a work in progress to adjust. We never stop adjusting. Right? It's not as though you go from one form of self-identity and then there's this, okay, now I'm in the other form of self-identity. Because the old identity needs to shrivel out and the new identity needs to start growing. So if you look back over 5 years, you can say, wow, I've changed so much. But if you look and say 2 months ago, unless it's certain behaviors, like if you quit smoking or something, then you can say it was relatively fast. But mostly it's a long and it's an ongoing process. And the point of it is just to keep actualizing you, keep growing you, understanding how are you going to live the most purposeful, meaningful life so you don't get to 80 and you look back and you think, damn, that was I wasted so much.
When you're constantly pushing yourself, you want to scale to the next level, the outcomes are not always favorable because sometimes we fail. So, how do you cope with failure and detach yourself from the outcomes and grow despite the setback?
First, a hole up in a room, binge watch chocolate. Yeah, at least a couple of days. Lick the wound. You're going to fail. Look at Thomas Edison. He said he didn't fail. He just learned 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb. And the failure is a funny thing because you only fail when you stop trying. And a lot of people, they stop trying before they would actually know whether this thing was going to work or not. So when they think about it, for them, it was a failure, but it was actually just that you stopped trying. So I think failure is a little bit loaded. And what does it mean you failed? Again, there are simple things like quitting smoking, whether, I want to say pass or fail, but that doesn't work. But you'll know I failed at quitting smoking because I'm still doing it. But if it's things like improving a skill, if it's things like getting into a different career, that might be a good example to go with. Maybe you don't. Maybe you want to go from, like me, from finance into something with sales, and you apply to everywhere and it's just decline. So you failed. So if you stop trying, you can go back to a life of finance and you can just put up with it. Or you can say, I failed, but now I need to change my approach because everything I've done until this point hasn't got me the result I want. So what is the next thing? Upskilling yourself might be something. You might want to get more, so work with a friend or a family, pick up the skills. You might want to network, so get to know people in that space who have the opportunity to assess you, not from an interview perspective, but from a behavior perspective. So there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat, and as long as you don't stop learning and trying different things, you can't fail. I don't know if that's true, though, because I'm pretty sure I would fail if I wanted to be president or if I wanted to be a very well-known singer. But that's my own limitations, and I'm fine with that. I can live with that.
In your personal life, what sparked your transition from psychology into the world of business strategy and coaching?
Remember, it was really talent development where I started wanting to look into human behavior and how that impacts results. So from there, it was really about helping people thrive in the workspace. So a very strong focus on leadership and mostly at the CEO, kind of the C-suite level. From there, what I did is I wanted to transition into the business space. So get out of corporate because there's so many structures in corporate that it puts you in a box and it's very difficult to play outside of those lines. So I wanted to go into a space where there was more creativity, there was more complexity, and the shifts were a lot broader. And that is how I got into the entrepreneurial landscape. So from there, it was all about helping small and medium-sized business. And I really loved this space because it's the easiest place to work while you're developing the business skills, putting the business together, formulating the strategy, understanding how to read your results, knowing how to productize and differentiate. While you're doing all of that, it is so beautifully connected with the behaviors. So what is the mindset of this individual? What are their beliefs? What are their values? Because all of that is woven into the business. So by focusing on the business first, and then focusing on the entrepreneur and their belief structures second. I say first and second, but the goal is really the behavior because the behavior is going to drive. But it's not a direct behavior. It's not like you sit across from me and I'm really focusing on you. So what about this and what about that? It's more a case of let's have a look at this thing. And while we're looking at it, so those behaviors are discovered. And it's the most rewarding thing I can think of doing.
You talk a lot about the monsters under the bed and define them conscious fears that hold us back.
Yeah.
When you look at the older version of you, prior to you 35, right?
Yep.
When you got that new
so long ago.
What were some of the monsters under your bed that were holding you back at the time?
Wow, that's going to cut real deep. I think there were two things. The first was fear. I had an incredible amount of kind of transferred fear. So I grew up quite disempowered, and that really carried into my adult life. I didn't feel like I had a say. I didn't feel like I counted for anything. I just believed that I was just this thing that kind of had to just go and just live the best I can. So the first was really that sense of disempowerment and fear. But I think the other monster under the bed, I think that the biggest one for me, and it's actually quite connected, is the narrative. It's the self-talk. I'm not good enough. I'm never going to be able to do anything. I can't amount to anything. There's nothing to look forward to. This is just going to be it. It was those two things. So the one was the learned behavior, almost like a learned helplessness. And then the other was just the reinforcing of that. And unfortunately, I believed everything that I said. So all of those things that I told myself, I'm not good enough, I'm never going to amount to anything, because it was coming from me, I actually believed it was true. I think if you want to get on top of anything, the first thing you need to do is get on top of that inner narrative. Because if that inner narrative is not cheering you on, that is something that can very quickly drag you down.
So how did you go about rewiring the nervous system of yours to feel safe taking these big, uncomfortable actions?
It's a very long process. So I've done a lot of work with professionals. I needed to get professionals to help me with that. And it's been, I think, the biggest change for me was putting myself out there and exposing myself to things that I didn't think that I could do. I didn't really believe that I was going to be any good at sales, but I put myself in that position and I did incredibly well. The thing is, just because I did well didn't mean that was it, right? That insecurity, that fear, it doesn't go away. In fact, it's never gone away, but it is possible to hold it in check and to challenge it and say, I've been successful in this and I've been successful in that and I've got my degree super late, top marks. So you have to keep challenging it. But like I say, it's not about getting rid of it. It's about not exactly making friends, but it's about understanding I have this thing going on for me, but that is not going to limit what I do or what I feel that I can do. So it's more about carrying that awareness in a more constructive way.
Was there a time that you want to quit this path? And if you did, what pulled you through? Because it wasn't just sunshine and rainbows. When we're looking back at our life and we're summarizing it, it sounds so beautiful to the person listening to it. But when we were in the moment, wasn't that pretty? Yeah. Did you ever want to quit? And when that happened, what did you do? How'd you pull through?
Whenever I want to quit, I'll throw myself into learning something new. Because for me, learning, if I could get paid to learn, I tell you, that would be first prize for me. But because I value learning so much, when I get bored of what I'm doing, the first thing I'll do is I will try to add a new skill or a new perspective to what I'm doing to see, am I just bringing boredom into the space? Has it become routine for me? Because for me, quitting is always going to happen because it's routine. I'm not learning anything, I'm not growing. I don't want every day to be the same. Even now, at my very young age of whatever it is, even now, I'm learning skills that are way outside my comfort zone. I'm learning YouTube and I'm learning how to edit videos. And for me, this is just about, it's not moving away from business development, from personal development. It's adding a flavor to that. So it's always possible for you to add things, even if it's horizontally. Typically, we think of, okay, we want to progress vertically. So if I want a promotion, it needs to be more power, responsibility, more money. But at some point, when you find a space that you're happy in, there's also horizontal movement. So there's always going to be more scope and more things that you can add to make it a richer experience for yourself without going vertical.
You obviously turned to sales and you became an expert in that. You have something you like to talk about, which is the 5 tips to turn sales fails into sales successes. Help the entrepreneurs listening to this understand how can we go about doing that?
Sales for me was surprisingly easy. So I was an introvert and automatically that head is going, how can you possibly sell because you are so scared to even speak? But what I learned very quickly is sales, it's not about trying to bully somebody into doing something that they don't want to do. It really is about communicating in such a way that you reflect that you understand what their problem is, and all you do is you're positioning a solution. So the better you are able to communicate that solution, the more likely you are to close the deal or make the sale. All of us, every single person, makes decisions to buy emotionally, and then they support it logically. So when you're making a decision, we all come with this very finely tuned set of scales. While we're speaking, or as we're looking at pricing for cars or for education or for whatever, we're seeing, is the value even for me? So price and value need to be even, or I need to perceive that I'm getting more value for the price. And that really is the trick. Everybody has a number. You just need to be able to communicate so that your value equals that number and you're going to do well. For technical people or for introverted people, instead of focusing on the fact that you're selling, it's more a case of you're communicating your value. It's just a very simple mindset shift, because any technical person, when you get them to speak about what it is that they're building or what it is that they're designing, any introvert is going to become more animated because that's their happy space. So it's just about transferring that energy and an enthusiasm into a conversation with a client. And then sales doesn't feel like sales. Another thing that I used to do is, so you would have, Amy Cuddy is fantastic for using body language. And one of the things that I used to do is I used to go to high corporate clients and big buildings and elevators, and I used to love it when I could get into an elevator by myself, because I would literally go and kung fu fight. I'm not kidding. I would have that everybody is kung fu fighting, and I would be kicking, and I would be so absolutely ridiculous, so that by the time those doors open, I can't stop smiling because it's just been so stupid. But those are the kinds of things, I think, just to get yourself out of that kind of paralyzed nervous mode, rather try to see the comedy in it.
Why do you think so many entrepreneurs have a difficult time describing what they actually do?
That is a great question, because the response is really going to be around meaning and purpose for them. So I'll give you an example. I work extensively in the healthcare services sector, and when I ask, say, a chiropractor, when I ask a chiropractor what they do, they will tell me they're a chiropractor. And then I'll have to challenge that and say, I'm sorry, I thought you were a business owner. I thought you were a director. These are two completely different things, right? When you're a business owner, you'll respond in an entrepreneurial way. So it might sound something like, I own a company that gets people out of pain and off pain medication, moving fluidly into their golden years. Whereas if you speak to a chiropractor, they're literally going to say, chiropractor, I fix people's spines. I think there's that story of the bricklayers, which I love to talk about it. And the man walking past the three bricklayers, and they're all doing the same thing. And he says to the first bricklayer, what are you doing? And the guy says, I'm making bricks. He goes on to the second person. He says, what are you doing? And he says, I'm making this wall. He goes on to the third person. He says, what are you doing? And he says, I'm building a cathedral. So I think really your perspective is going to be stuck at how you are defining what you're doing. And that might be a great place for you to start. Is that really what you do?
What do entrepreneurs get wrong about visibility? Because we are either living in an age where we want to be visible all the time, we're putting our messaging up. As we discussed, some of the messaging is wrong. But on the other hand, there are people who are so tired of being seen that they completely shun away from it. So what's the right thing to do? How do you go about it?
I would start that line of questioning saying, what kind of visibility are you looking for? So if you're looking at positioning your business, is this about building your brand? And if it's about building a brand, there's a simple set of activities or functions that you can do, which usually involve using various means of getting you out there. So it can be digital platforms, it can be local community events, it can be a lot of different things. If you're in the talent space and you are an actor or actress and you want to get more availability, of course, then you're going to go and expand that portfolio. So I think to give a better response, I'd have to say, what kind of visibility were you thinking of?
Once we have determined, though, okay, most people want visibility because it drives traffic so that they can get paid, right, to sell their stuff. So I don't even know the thing that you mentioned out. It's so important because they don't even think about what is the kind of visibility they're looking for. If they want visibility or even to grow their businesses, what would you see are the first three systems that a business owner should consider setting up, regardless of what industry they're in?
Love it. Okay, this is all about eyeballs. And this is what marketing is all about. It's about getting in the eyeballs of the person who you follow. So if you are, let's take it, I work in healthcare, so let's start with a chiropractic client. If they wanted to get more visibility to drive more flow, I would say let's look at 3 different lead generation sources. So what we need to do is we need to, first of all, have a look at paid traffic, because that's a very easy way to get out there. There's a whole bunch of different paid traffic places that you can explore, and that is one way where you're going to improve your visibility. But at the same time, I've got chiropractors who are incredibly active in the communities that they serve, because it's close-knit communities. So they might go and do talks at local workplaces or factories. Factories are very good for that kind of thing, because usually the movements are so repetitive, so they put those people at risk. Sports teams, so high school sports teams, they'll go and speak about spinal hygiene, those kind of things. So you've got paid traffic, you've got community events, you can go to, what are these things? Within your field of practice, there's going to be continuing development things. So that's something that you can look at. You can look at performance video branding. So this isn't paid traffic, but this is more about putting content out, which talks about different pain points, different problem areas, different ideas for health, vitality, and it all needs to connect with your vision, your mission, and your purpose. So there are endless ways to do that. Networking, another really great way to do it. So if you're a chiropractor and you work on sports injuries, the next thing for you to do would be to go to local physiotherapists or GPs, surgeons, even gyms, and say, this is a service I provide. Are you finding your clients are experiencing these kind of things? Okay, let's see how we can work together so that we can set up a referral system. So there's a lot of things that you can do. But what people typically do, what business owners typically do, is they'll put all their eggs in one basket and they'll try only one thing. And then they'll cry when they don't get the results that they want, but they haven't been diversified enough, right? You need to be visible in a lot of different places so that you can be in front of the eyeballs of the people that you need to be.
While that is true, other business gurus also tell us to be able to pick a thing and stick with it. There's a lot of entrepreneurs face the shiny object syndrome, right? Where today they're working on LinkedIn and tomorrow they're working on Instagram, and they justify that action but just by saying, I'm diversifying. So how do we truly maintain that balance in between having enough areas where we are experimenting, gathering results, and doubling down on what's working versus doing so much that we're just distracted, not doing anything at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to that shiny objects thing, for me, that's more around what is the service delivery? What is the product that you have? So if you are a beautician, you don't want to be doing hair, nails, pedicures, some therapy on the side, some counseling, and maybe some financials, bookkeeping as well. It's more about staying in your lane, being very certain of what you are going to be good at, because this is the only way that you can stay differentiated in the market. When it comes to the visibility side, remember, I say different baskets because you don't want everything in the paid traffic basket. So your more common ones would be YouTube, paid ads for YouTube, Facebook, Google, those kinds. 4 different baskets. Okay, so have paid traffic and then have referrals, have local community events, have lunch and learns. But track it, right? You need to be able to track, is the return on my time investment worth having this as a lead generation source? And if it's not worth the time investment, is it worth the money investment? So for paid traffic, for example, you're going to set a budget and then you're going to monitor, am I getting enough return on that spend so that this is a viable source for me to attract people? One video that I would put in there is you need to give it enough time to work. You need to make sure that you are adapting. So when you can see that it's not working, you need to ask yourself, is there a way for me to develop a skill which is going to allow me to do better? And if it's not skill-based, then by all means, try something else. You're absolutely right. You don't want to overextend yourself because it takes a lot of different skills. It takes completely different skill sets between all of these different baskets. But I would say have a minimum of 3 different lead gen sources and then perfect them. Get them really dialed in so that you know how to control it. And that is a way that you're always going to make sure that you're able to hit your growth goals.
Tell us a little bit about your mastermind. Who is it for, and what can someone expect from it?
The mastermind is done with Dr. Chris Zano. So Dr. Chris Zano had the largest chiropractic practice in America at one stage. He was very successful, and he's partnered with us to be able to put the certain fundamentals together so that you're able to 10x literally your business. It's just a focus on marketing strategy, your sales systems. It gives you the tools to be able to differentiate. And it also focuses on the different phases of business development. So with these components, it's highly activity based. As you're watching the mastermind, you need to actually apply what is being spoken about. And when you do that, you are going to see tremendous results. It's on the school platform. It's 14 days free, and thereafter you can take your time. So you can move through the content as fast or slow as you want, and it's fully supported. So there's workshops every week. There's a direct link to me personally for implementation calls to make sure that you're on the right track and focused. And it's pretty hardcore. It's for people who are serious about making changes to drive results.
Signing up for a mastermind, a coaching service, it requires a certain level of vulnerability because we're asking for help, right? And sometimes for entrepreneurs, that's not easy to do. So what do you wish more people understood about asking for help?
For you to be very good at anything, you have to be prepared to suck at it first, right? If you were to see some of the first videos that I edited, it could literally blow your mind how bad they are. But I kept at it. And I'm keeping at it, and I'm building my skill, and give me another couple of weeks and I'm going to be putting some videos together that even I can be super proud of. For any skill, for anything that you want to change, all of the results that you've got up until this point is a consequence of the thinking and the behavior that you've done up until now. If you want to get different results, that means change. It means you need to change your thinking, you need to change your behavior, which means you're going to go through a period where you don't know what you're doing. Any entrepreneur who wants to be successful has got to embrace that discomfort. Because unless you can get comfortable being uncomfortable, you're never going to learn anything new. And it's very unlikely you're going to learn what you need to get the kind of results that you're looking for.
We're going to go into our last segment, which is a rapid fire. So the first thing that comes to your mind, you just blurt it out. What is one truth that you used to believe that you have outgrown?
Ghosts. I know it's stupid. I really believed in ghosts. And I know this is totally not work related, but yeah, I did.
What is something that you're currently unlearning?
I don't really believe that I'm unlearning, just because from a neuroscience perspective, you can't unlearn. But I'm re-identifying myself, really. I'm looking at positioning myself into the digital space where before everything was analog. So learning new systems, learning how to use all these newfangled platforms and knowing what they're all for and how they're all different. That's a big learning curve for me.
If you could advise any entrepreneur one tattoo of a mantra on their arm, what would it say?
Screw it. Just do it.
I love it.
You can also put the little Nike if you want. Like, why not? No, sorry, Nike. I said nothing.
On a serious note, what is a message you want to pass on to the entrepreneur listening right now? This person's feeling stuck. They're feeling overwhelmed. Maybe they're feeling afraid to take a leap. What do you want to tell them?
I would want to share that there's greatness in you. The way that you're going to expose more of that is to chip away at the things that are holding you back. Right? It's not about changing you into something that you're not. It's about taking away all of this stuff that is hiding who you really are. It's there. It's not something that you need to ultimately create or generate. It's just about unleashing it. Anyone can do that if they're prepared to put in the work.
Tracey, where can people find you? How can they connect with you? Tell us what's going on in your life.
Sure. So I can be found on superclinicproject.com. That is our podcast, but it's also our portal into all of the different services that we offer. Something else that I'm offering exclusively to listeners is a 30-minute chaos to calm session with me. So if there's uncertainty, not clear on the way forward, there's a free 30 minutes that we can work through what would be the next steps. And I will provide that link. Maybe we can drop that in the notes below.
Tracy, it's been an honor and a privilege interviewing you. Thank you so much for letting us get a peek into the mind of someone like yourself who's peak performance all throughout. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.